The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
Western Conference Finals series. There's so much to get to. Really fun. You know, a few years ago, I think we could have said a couple of young up and coming teams in the West. I think the Thunder ascended more rapidly from like, I don't what was it? 3 years ago they played each other in the play-in. I think it was.
Yeah,
Not,
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Yeah. Which, like, you know, obviously SGA was the best player on the team then. It was on the Wolves, but like so much happened around them and a lot has changed over the last few years. So a lot to get to today on the show. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to ask Rylan a couple questions about the Thunder and kind of his take on the series. And then we're going to flip it. We'll do the opposite. Rylan will ask me some questions about the Wolves and what to expect in the series. Then we'll give some predictions and just kind of a general conversation about the matchup between the two teams. And for me, I think what's most intriguing about this series is kind of the push and pull of the matchups and how, you know, like the Wolves are obviously a lot bigger, at least in terms of true big men than say the Lakers or the Warriors, in overall size, bigger than the Warriors. And it's not exactly the same with the Thunder, given Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, and then obviously the overall length and athleticism of the Thunder as a rotation. But I'm really interested to see who guards who. I think it's pretty obvious, like, who's guarding the best player on either team, whether it be SGA or who's guarding Ant. But beyond that, like, what's the Julius Randle matchup look like? Who does Rudy Gobert guard? And by extension, who does Chet Holmgren guard? What's your take from a Thunder perspective? Like, how do you think OKC handles Julius Randle? I mean, he's arguably been better than Anthony Edwards for most of the first two rounds. And, you know, well, obviously Ant is the head of the snake, and that's who you have to pay the most attention to. Randle has kind of feasted on, you know, being that secondary guy. What's your take on how OKC will try and guard Julius Randle in this series?
Yeah, the Thunder are going to throw a ton of different looks at Julius Randle and at these Timberwolves in general, just like they throw different looks at even guys like Nikola Jokic, who are the best in the world. And typically you try to defend those guys with one key guy, but in reality, you can't do that. So with Julius Randle, I think that whenever they play double bigs, it'll be Isaiah Hartenstein who takes him up on those post-up opportunities and gets into his body and tries to deter him from taking over a game. And then Chet Holmgren takes on Rudy Gobert, because Rudy Gobert in the pick and roll can be very effective. Chet's a very effective pick and roll defender, though. And if the Timberwolves do want to just bog the game down and go away from Ant Edwards, go away from Julius Randle post touches and dump things into Gobert, I think that the Thunder would just welcome that. So even if you believe that they could change course and go with Gobert as an offensive option, I think OKC would be fine with that. And then in the non-double big minutes, that's when you see the Thunder needing to scale guys up, particularly Alex Caruso, defending Julius Randle the way that he did Nikola Jokic in Game 7. And then even Jalen Williams, J-Dub, who has been entrusted to defend fours throughout his NBA career to date, and even this season after the acquisitions of Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, he's still been able to do that. He played center this year because of the unforeseen injuries in November to this Thunder team. So I think that Randle will see a lot of different bodies, from Hartenstein to Caruso to J-Dub.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I think J-Dub makes a lot of sense to guard Randle. And I don't think the Wolves are going to necessarily turn to Gobert for much offense. But like on the other side of the floor, though, that's also a question, is do the Wolves cross match that? They don't necessarily want Rudy Gobert on the perimeter. Do they put him on, you know, I guess Lou Dort would be the least, you know, last year they did that when Josh Giddey was on the Thunder. That was the plan, was put Rudy on Josh Giddey and let him play off of that. Lou Dort's a little more potent, at least as a shooter. Potent's not the right word. A little more effective as a shooter than Josh Giddey, but I'm curious to see what that looks like on that side of the floor. And you mentioned slowing the game down. I think that's going to be a key for Minnesota. OKC plays pretty fast, and when they do run, they run at an extremely they're really efficient when they do it. I guess, what do you think if the Wolves do try and play, like, I guess I mentioned kind of the push and pull of the matchups, but along with that, substitution pattern wise, like Chris Finch to this point has done a really good job of like scaling back Rudy's minutes when it makes sense, but Rudy hasn't, you know, the Rudy gets played off the floor. That hasn't happened, but Chris Finch has been judicious with those minutes. Do you think the Thunder, like you mentioned, the double big minutes, and it's funny because the Wolves will do the same thing, obviously. Are the Thunder going to be impacted by what the Wolves do in terms of their double bigs, or are the Thunder just going to kind of keep their same rotation and be like, hey, we could play small, we could play big? Do you think anything rotation-wise gets tweaked based on the matchup?
Yeah, I think that it does get tweaked based on the matchup because the Thunder have been a team that can react to whatever looks you give them. And both teams have this element. It's why I think that this is a fantastic matchup because Nas at the 5 is exactly what Oklahoma City loves to do of playing small. Only like Nas at the 5 is actually a great option for Minnesota, whereas most teams don't have a good small ball option. So they're less of a dynamic in that way. But both teams have the dynamic of being able to go double big, solo big, and going small. And both teams feel great about all three layers to that rotation. So who's going to be the first one to decide how the game is going and try to dictate what dynamics to press? I think that the Thunder have been pretty stubborn with sticking with their double bigs to start games. And I think that will happen in game one, I assume. But they're going to start with their two bigs plus J-Dub and SGA and Lou Dort. And then from there, I think that the first segment of the game will determine how the Thunder react to that. I personally think that their best punch against Minnesota would be to go single big and have just Chet Holmgren or Hartenstein at the 4 at a time. I think that it makes their guards more comfortable offensively. I think that you mentioned what it does to Rudy defensively. The Wolves, either way, either by leaning into their zone, which they should all series long, lean into their zone, or cross-matching Rudy, they're going to give capable but streaky shooters open opportunities, and it will come down to if the Thunder can hit them or not. But I do think that the rotation that Chris Finch should use is whatever rotation helps him protect the basketball. Like however you think that you need to manipulate your roster to slow the game down, and not slow the game down so much of pace, but as eliminate turnovers and make shots and create offense, and to where you are making this Thunder team take the ball out of the net and not get it in transition, not get it off the glass. Because once that starts to happen, that's where the Thunder can eliminate their big weakness. Where they can't eliminate their big weakness, which is their half-court offense in this setting, is if you're consistently protecting the basketball and consistently making your shots, and they're forced to let you settle down into that zone defense, which as much as Denver's getting a lot of credit for how they played zone against OKC, and they should, Denver and Cleveland, two best teams defending OKC this season, and they've done it both with that zone defense that they're capable of. So I think that it's going to come down to the Thunder probably reacting to Minnesota and their rotation.
Yeah, to your zone point, the Wolves don't play a lot of zone. I think something like half of their possessions as a zone defense this year came against OKC, across 4 games. And they just like for the reason you said, like, and we saw, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit, but the last game between the two teams, that 24-point comeback in the fourth quarter in OKC on the second night of a back-to-back when they played in Minneapolis one night, the next night was in OKC. And much of that comeback came with Ant off the floor, and it was completely the Wolves just loading up on SGA and, making somebody else beat them, which is kind of cliche, but like that's what teams have done. Zone is another way to kind of sort of do that, to try and cut off driving lanes and force somebody else to make shots, especially from the perimeter. Is that a strategy is that really the only strategy that's worked against the Thunder this year? Like, obviously nothing's really worked. They've been the best team in the NBA from start to finish. They're a top, 3 unit on both ends of the floor, and the best defense by far. But in terms of on the offensive side, when they've been beaten this year, has it been more of like, hey, the other guys haven't made shots from the perimeter, or has there been anything else that you've seen that has disrupted the Thunder's rhythm at all?
No, I think that it's been teams that are willing to stick with that strategy of playing zone / loading up on SGA specifically and forcing other guys to do damage. And like that comeback game against Minnesota was Minnesota against OKC is a testament to it, because like the Timberwolves pulled Ant, but they didn't quit. They didn't stop playing. They kept playing to their identity, even though it wasn't working to that point. It's why the Thunder grew that lead, because guys were hitting shots that weren't named SGA. But then what happened in the fourth quarter to make that comeback? The Thunder, and I painfully went back and charted this the day after that game, 0 for 14 on open threes in that fourth quarter, which opened that door up to the comeback and to the win for Minnesota. Where teams get in trouble is going away from that strategy of like, when the Thunder role players and supporting cast are hitting those shots like that Thunder team was in the first 3 quarters of that game, teams try to adjust to something else instead of just taking their lumps and fighting it out for 48 minutes, because that cold streak can come. And all you're hoping for is that the cold streak happens in 4 different games and you get 4 different wins to win this series. I think that is the very best strategy to take down OKC. Obviously not infallible, but it's the best option.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Pacers and Knicks, it will be a fun and tough one.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
I think the Pacers will have the Knicks perhaps their toughest test yet. Rhett, you are a man who is not looking forward to a beer after the season because the Pacers are still playing. How are you?
I am great. I kept waiting for, a series to get close to bring in the closer, and then the series never got close to really need to bring in the extra motivation for the team for me to actually close out a series in the way we did last year. So I'm happy to be here for the front end, and rivalry basketball started back up.
It's as good as it gets. The WWE part's funny, even though Brunson and Halliburton like each other. The history's fun. And it's two teams that their last finals trip came against each other. It's two teams that were close in record this year and probably believe this is their best finals chance in ages. Like, it's just awesome. It's fun. It's exciting. And every little advantage is going to matter. I told Rhett to come with some. I have my own. A lot of them are going to be overlap, which is good, so I can knock them off my list as he goes. And I also told Rhett he could go first. Rhett, give me an advantage you see for the Pacers in this series.
The first one is very obvious, but I am not going to choose the obvious one. I'm going to say Rick Carlisle.
Oh, I like that. Okay, go ahead.
So
Tibbs is having a good playoffs, though.
He is because he's been he defaults to the one thing that he does, and it keeps working. So yes, he's doing well in that. But I think that if you put Carlisle and Tibbs next to each other in a series that I think you and I both think is going to go a long ways, I trust Carlisle to make not only in-game adjustments a little bit better, but also series-long adjustments a lot better, which I think are going to be necessary as we deal with Brunson, as the Pacers end up dealing with potential Mitchell Robinson, Karl Anthony Towns front court type of deal. I think the Knicks have very few trump cards, quote unquote, that they can play, and I think that the Pacers are better suited to either weather those or dictate the game so much that they can't play those than the Knicks have on the other side of things with Tibbs.
Yeah, last year, even just the big ones, like figuring out how to target Dante more often throughout the series, putting Nesmith on Brunson after the slower start in that. Even just stuff like that mattered a lot in last year's series, where it was very back and forth for the home team every single time. And I've seen that throughout the playoffs this year, where it's every time the Pacers hit a wall where they're like, oh, crap, how do we solve this thing? The Bucks switched their butts off in the second half of Game 3. They come out ready for it in Game 4. The Cavs had this goofy 3-2 also in Game 3. They were ready for it in Game 4. They see a problem, they figure it out, right? And that's been very good for them in this playoffs, and really for all of time with this team and this core and this coach. And that's a good thing against a team like the Knicks, who the part of this that is related to depth, and we might spoil or talk about depth later, is you have more options for adjustments when you play more players. Every time anybody would talk about the Denver Nuggets versus the Thunder, they'd be like, what adjustments do you see for the Nuggets? Everybody's like,
play better.
I don't know. Yeah, they only have 6 guys who can do anything. So the Knicks have really good players. Their top end talent's very good. When they mix one of McBride or Mitch with the starters, they're awesome, right? We already talked about that with Gavin Shaw. But that's it. That's the end of their really strong hitting a lineup adjustments. Obviously, there's a bunch of tactical stuff you can do, but you're even more limited in what you can do tactically when you have less resources to do it. And he obviously is going to play his guys 38 minutes plus every night. So that's just one advantage for Carlisle. On top of that, I already think he's a sharp adjuster, is that he has way more resources to actually do it if he wants to, which matters in a series like this.
Of course, I say Carlisle versus Tibbs. It's the entire coaching staff. So obviously credit to the Pacers coaching
Yes.
staff and all the adjustments that they make, of course, because I think that's a huge part of it is those behind the bench paying attention to stuff and bringing film to the table for halftime adjustments. But just like I can't speak enough about how limited the Knicks options are that Tibbs can use. And his answer is just throw more minutes at his starters. And that going against stagnant teams or, relatively, not super experienced teams like Detroit and then what the Celtics ended up being and really struggled with. Like you can afford to just keep throwing your fastball over and over because they don't force you to do anything different. I think the Pacers can.
The Knicks had lots of injuries last year throughout the series, but they changed their lineup a few times along the way, like just on actual choices. I do wonder and have talked about if they would ever go McBride or Mitchell Robinson in the starting five. Probably the guy out would be hard if that happened, but that's like all I can think of in terms of major switches they would make. And it'd still be the same general rotation and lots of minutes to one guy or the other. But that's just like if the starting five is getting killed at the start of a game, you have to do something like that. But yeah, I'll be fascinated by the coaching battle. I think Tibbs is a good coach. I was surprised so many people were like, yeah, would the Knicks fire him if they have a bad playoffs? I'm like, he kind of has like the perfect team for what he's good at. But like even Tyrese Halliburton was talking about him being a little older school, or the Knicks in general, in their style of how much they play their guys and all that stuff. And that's not to say old school's worse. If it fits your team, it fits your team. It's just the perception of him. And that will be a big deal in this playoffs. But like he's a championship coach. He's very good. All right, let's do the obvious one, Rhett.
Yep.
Let's talk about pace. It's in the name for the Indiana Pacers. Here's what has to be stated about this. Pace is only an advantage for the Pacers if the game is at their speed, obviously. That becomes an advantage for the Knicks if it is at their speed. So far in the playoffs, granted, the Bucks are not as good as the Knicks, and the Cavs didn't play as well as the Knicks have in the playoffs. The Pacers have had a little problem making the game be at their tempo, right? Their quick offensive possessions, keep the ball moving, pass, move, with McConnell on top and on the floor. They're still playing fast, even though they're not quite as effective as the starting five. They have been almost always set in the terms of engagement for a game or a series with the pace. Infrequently, it has not gone their way. This is the most dramatic difference in pace between the Pacers and their opponent from the regular season, right? The Bucks were like, Cavs are a little faster than that. The Knicks are slow, right? And that suits them. I'm not saying that's bad, but it's possible that the games slow down a bunch and the Knicks are like, sweet, we're happy with this. So pace, should the Pacers continue to be able to set it the way they want, like they have for much of the playoffs, would be an advantage for them. They're more comfortable playing that way. I asked Halbert about it today. He said the key to that, which makes sense to me, is defense. You have to get stops to be able to hit the open floor. Then you can score easier. You can set your own defense. We saw that in effect a lot in the Cavs series. But just given the Pacers' playoff success, I find it more credible to me that the games would be played at their pace. We saw some Pistons pace dictation in the first round that the Knicks overcame. I think that will be an advantage for the Pacers, but they can't. If it becomes a disadvantage, they're in a lot of trouble. But right now, I see it being an advantage.
I mean, the biggest thing that they can do is just wear the crap out of them. Like even if they're not getting anything out of it, I'm not saying you have to drive in transition with the intent to either get a layup or draw a foul, and you just start throwing random stuff out there and you end up not getting a foul. Now you miss a layup going the other way. Like that pace will work against you if you're wild and reckless. But on the other hand, if you can just like get them to take 5 more steps every possession at a speed that isn't their speed, and you will probably end up winning this series by the time 6-7 games of that rolls around, because I just don't think that there are a lot of teams that can actually hang with the Pacers when they play their style. And we haven't seen anybody really shut them down either, even for an entire game. There have been stretches where it seems like the Pacers are just in a funk and they'll get down 19 points, but then they'll come back in the same game 3 times in a series. And so the pace is going to be absolutely fascinating. And I think that's one huge part of where my next one is going to come into play, not to move on, but the pace and the depth go hand in hand, because even if the depth of the Pacers is not as effective as like maintaining what the starters do, at the very least, if CJ McConnell, you're picking up Brunson 94 feet. You are in his shorts the second that ball goes through the rim, or the second he gets it on in the backcourt. And that's just, if that's the way to be effective, you just wear them down, then that's what you have to do.
Yeah, the wear down effect's been a big common word phrase playing against the Pacers in this playoff so far. They have the highest pickup point on defense of any team. We all know about their offensive pace. Like, I can just watch them play and tell you they play faster. I talked about the passes this week. Like, you have to move a lot on defense because the ball's moving a lot, and they don't turn it over in that style, which is so hard to do. If every team could pass the ball a gazillion times and never turn it over, they would. Like, everybody recognizes why it works. It's just hard. And then what you're talking about, like, they're down 19 and they go on this run. Like, those crush you if you're an opponent physically and mentally, because the Pacers score by whipping the ball around a million times, and then immediately you're being pressed. You're like, ugh, and then you guys don't score. And then the Pacers score again. And then you turn around and Andrew Nemhard's in your face again. And you're like, again, this guy's up here again. Like, I'm 70 feet from the basket. And then you're looking up and calling for help. And like, yeah, that like physically that wears down teams. And some teams have fought through it. Like the Celtics had no trouble fighting through it last year in the conference finals. But it's also like a mental thing. It's just like, oh, again, like, oh, God, again, I got to do this again. And that's why the pace battle is so important to me, because if the Knicks are setting that engagement, the Pacers will be like, oh, we got to score against this set defense again. Like, oh, we got to try to stop this 18-second possession again. And it's so deflating to defend for that long and still have Jalen Brunson just like wiggle his way into a shot that only he's comfortable with. So the pace will be really important, but that wear down effect, and that comes with the bench being a part of it, because they keep the tempo up. They keep playing that style, albeit far less effective for much of this playoffs. They've had a lot of up and down guys, for better or worse. Helps them a lot, and it's helped them a lot so far. So if they can, the bench was really good against the Knicks last year. Like, if that can be a thing again, that's going to be huge.
Yes, no question. And that's, the
move to the bench if you want to.
Yeah, let's go. Let's move into the bench.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting easy. Whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists, there's just so many ways to bet on your favorite games, your favorite players. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place your first $5 bet on, say, Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers, who are 4.5-point underdogs at the Garden later tonight. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Can the Knicks slow down the Pacers' red-hot shooting?
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
First Eastern Conference Finals, over age 10 for both of us, right? I was 9 I guess I was 10 the last time they were in it. So over age 10. I think you're also the same age as me, maybe a year older, but either way, been a long time. How have you been enjoying this return to the Eastern Conference Finals this week and all of the madness that has come with it?
It's been wild. I was but a wee lad, whippersnapper in the mid 90s. So it's been a while. And I go full nerd in the playoffs, where I'm just like living and dying on like every substitution and every like, oh my God, he dropped too deep in this possession. Oh my God, the switch was not clean, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just sometimes lose the forest for the trees or whatever. So it's easy. Like, I'll be thinking about what happened in this crazy series, and I'm like, oh my God, like, how the hell did we do this with still far from maximizing our offense, right? Like, we got a salt-based sprinkle of 5 out. We got a little dash of double big every game. Sometimes it was because someone was in foul trouble. Sometimes it wasn't because of that. And I'm just like, man, like, I don't know how it didn't take us maximizing everything to beat Boston. But then I remember kind of like, even some adjustments for a team this talented are going to be really impactful. Like, I was, to put it to contrast, I was just reading friend of Locked On, friend of the Strickland, but ops for the current month, Caitlin Cooper's latest email, or email, it sounds like such a boomer, latest post on her Patreon on some stuff about Knicks Pacers, kind of revolving around like some scheme stuff they might do, and like through the lens of how they use Aaron Nesmith, and like the whole thesis of this post is basically like a lot hinges on how Nesmith is used on both ends, and can he rise to the moment, and do they use him in the right way, and like can he be a star in his role? Meanwhile, the Knicks, it's like, no, the adjustments result in $40 million players going from really good to really to like 50 like max player levels. Like, oh yeah, if you use OG right, he becomes the best defender in the NBA, and also he might hit 5 threes, and Mikal Bridges might win the game in the fourth quarter by himself while also playing defense. Like, there's just so much more to be gained from little things, and that's where I kind of gotta remind myself, like, this team is really talented. So that's not to say, take the talent of the Pacers for granted, but we got a squad here. Sometimes it's easy to forget that.
Yeah, I was gonna go a different direction to start the show, but since you bring them up, the crazy shooting variance for the Pacers in this postseason, I don't think can be overlooked. Like, I don't know, you could call it, I guess it's been, I don't want to call it lucky, but it's unusual. It's unusual how good they've been shooting this postseason. They're at 61.5% true shooting percentage as a team in this postseason, which is just insane, which is best in the playoffs for any playoff team. For those that don't know what true shooting percentage is, it's basically it's field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and free throw percentage all kind of amalgamized together into a shooting percentage that takes into account that a 3-pointer is worth more than a 2-pointer, and basically takes into account what all 3 shots are worth into the overall field goal percentage. So a 61.5 true shooting is insanity. It is crazy good. The Knicks, for perspective, are at 54.7% true shooting in the playoffs, which is the worst of the 4 remaining teams. So you might look at that and be like, oh, like 55 versus 61.5, like maybe not that huge of a difference, but no, that's like a huge delta. And a lot of that comes down to Nembhard and Nesmith, right? The 2 and last name guys that it for whatever reason, for me, I always Freudian slip them when we're talking about the games afterwards. But Nembhard is during the regular season was shooting 45.8% from the field, 29.1% from 3 on 2.7 threes per game. So an under 30% 3-point shooter during the regular season. In the playoffs, he's been shooting 50.5% from the field, 50% from 3, a 20-point jump, while basically doubling his volume to 4.4 threes per game. I mean, this guy, we saw it last year. He's definitely a playoff riser. I mean, he had his moments against the Knicks in the playoffs last year, but this is taking playoff rising to a whole different level. And then Nesmith as well, 50.7% field goals during the regular season, 43.1% from 3, which is a great 3-point shooter on 4.3 attempts per game. He has risen in the playoffs to shoot 52% from the field and 48.2% from 3 on 5.6 attempts per game. So we're looking at another guy who is more or less 1.5 his attempts and gone up 5 points in the playoffs. It doesn't normally go that way. Normally in the playoffs, you expect guys to lose like 3 to 5% off of their averages because things get more physical. Things become more difficult. Like, teams zero in on the 3-point line and the interior as the places to not give up points. We've seen that the Knicks have had to, adjust to different strategies by Boston and by Detroit to get by teams so far this postseason. But I guess my way to kind of wrap this up in a bow, at least for a first question here, Prez, do you think this series just comes down to taking advantage of a team that should hopefully be coming in cold-ish? They're going to have, by the time they tip off the first game, I think it's been over a week since their last played basketball game. So that allows them to get healthy and rested, but also might allow them to cool down a little bit. And so could it just be as simple in this series as if these guys just go back to shooting like normal basketball players and like how they normally shoot, that things could be, I don't want to say easy for the Knicks, but certainly easier than it appears on the surface right now, considering right now these guys have just been kind of running roughshod through their first two series of the postseason so far.
It's definitely a factor. Like Nembhard shot 29% from 3 on the year. Like Josh Hart shot better than that. Nembhard is a great mid-range shooter in the regular season, and he's been good from 3 in the postseason. But like, if he's shooting 50% from 3 in the playoffs in his career, I could tell you things like 3-point percentage doesn't stabilize until a couple hundred shots in. So, you know, you can have hot streaks that last really long, but you can't. If it happens, cool. But you obviously, if you're the Knicks, you can't rely on it. And that's kind of the key here. Is like you have to be appropriately respectful of him. You probably shouldn't be disrespectful of him. Like even though he shot 29% from 3, you shouldn't Josh Hart him, right? And you know, to your point about like teams daring the other guys to beat them. This is why the Pacers are a tough nut to crack, right? So the Bucks, I know like nobody watched the Bucks Pacers series, but like they face guarded Hallie a lot. And in Caitlin's newsletter, she had a crazy stat. I forget the exact number, but Nembhard actually averaged more pick and rolls as the ball handler in that series per game, like 35 to 27 or something. Because the Bucks were like, you might beat us, but it's not going to be with this dude, right? And Hallie shot 42% from the field, like 29% from 3. And Nembhard was their primary pick and roll ball handler. And the Pacers had a bunch of good offensive games, despite Hallie not being, for once, the drink, the straw that stirs the drink. And that's because, you know, you can face guard him, but like that means you're basically playing 4-on-4 instead of 5-on-5 because 2 guys are just taken out of the game. And any NBA team, if they had the width of an NBA court to play 4-on-4, they'd look really good. So it's a bit of a pick your poison with them. They're really good. If it's not one guy, it's another guy. We haven't even talked about Siakam, who's had probably the best year of his career. And I feel like this year has been probably the most underrated player in the league, even though I still think he's an annoying flopper who falls even more than Brunson and Cat, if that's possible. He's really talented. So, I mean, it'll be fascinating to see what's up with the shooting, right? Like, I mean, Knicks fans have gone through it. We're like, oh my God, Tim Hardaway Jr., 7 threes for this bum, right? Like, we've been on the other side of some shooting variance games, and I wouldn't say we've really had any of our own, but that's because like all of our guys are supposed to shoot, right? And our bench players don't play enough to have a shooting like Deuce will never have a game with 7 3-pointers in the playoffs because he's just never, except apparently closing out Boston in game 6, he's never going to play 30. He's not frequently going to play 30 minutes. So yeah, I mean, that's a really long-winded way of saying the shooting variance is something to be, I wouldn't say it's something to be afraid of, but it's something you should respect these guys. Neesmith, like he'd been a shooter, right? He'd been a shooter since college. Nembhard is just whatever, demon magic, just fine. We'll respect it. We got the Pope from Villanova. They got demon magic. We'll see what happens.